Good morning, internet guitar people. It's a lovely crisp morning here. Who knows what it is where you are, although you couldn't really tell. Like the studio's like a black hole of musical indulgence. Couldn't tell if it's 1 in the morning or 1 in the morning or 9 in the morning here. So anyway, back to music theory. And what we're going to do today is look at the notes in major and minor chords, where they come from and how they fit into the key. So this is a bit of a roadblock for people at first, trying to understand, I'm playing in the key of G and there's an A minor chord, but why do the notes for that come from the key of A? Like, what? Huh? Okay, we're going to explain all that today. If you've missed lessons 1 to 6, I think it is now, of this music theory course thing I have going, then I recommend going back and watching them. You can probably skip 6. It's answering questions people have had in the comments. But the first 5 at least, make sure you understand those. Watch them or look at what they're about and decide for yourself if you understand those, because you'll need to have that basis to understand this. The link to those are all in the description. So please go back and have a look at those. Make sure you understand what's in those before coming to this. So let's recap what we've done so far. We have got all the notes in music. We discovered there's no such thing as an H, I, or J. We've discovered all the notes in music. We've then discovered how they fall into groupings of notes called keys. Then we've discovered how those keys also have chords in them. And those chords are just simply groupings of the same collection of notes in the key. And we discovered minor keys as well, which is the 6th. And speaking of the 6th, we've discovered how every note in the key and chord in the key is numbered. So if you wrote out, let's throw up D as an example here. We write out all the notes in music beginning and starting on D. We use our tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone rule to then just get the notes in D. That's do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do in D, the major scale. So each of those is a number, and they're numbered just as you would think. D is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Back to D, 1 octave up. So it's 1 again, 1 octave up. Then each of those notes becomes a chord, according to the rule major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, minor flat 5. And then each of those chords has a number, which is, guess what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Number 6 is your relative minor key. So all the notes and chords in number 6 there, which in this case is B minor, are the same notes and chords as the key of D. And if you want to play in B minor, you just simply keep resolving to the B minor chord instead of to the D chord with the same group of chords, and you're playing in B minor. That's where we're at so far. So the next logical step to kind of look at is, okay, these chords, like in this case, E minor, F sharp minor, G, A, etc. What notes do they have in them and why? And then as an addendum to that, the second half of the lesson, why in this key is the E an E minor? Why is the G a G major? Why is the B a B minor? Why? That's what we're going to answer today. So, very first thing we're going to look at is where the notes in a major and a minor chord come from. Okay, have a look at any chord, any scale you can think of. There is a note at the beginning of it. And what I mean is, physically look at it written there. We'll put a few examples up here. You'll notice a D7 chord has a D. You'll notice an F sharp minor 9 chord has an F sharp. You'll notice a G major 9 has a G. You'll notice a B flat 7 sharp 9 has a B flat. What I'm saying is, and also let's look at scales to throw in the most ridiculous ones we can think of, like an F sharp Phrygian scale, which no, you have not learnt yet. An F sharp Phrygian scale has F sharp at the beginning. A D Dorian scale has a D. An A minor harmonic minor scale, an A harmonic minor scale or an A melodic minor scale has an A. What I mean is every chord you can think of, no matter how complex, and every scale you can think of, no matter how complex, starts with a note when you see it written there. And that note is the key you base the contents of that chord and the contents of that scale from. So you're simply looking for an A, an F sharp, a B flat. Don't worry about minor, major, that's chords, so let's not worry about that. We're just looking for a note at the beginning, and that tells you the key that the notes in that chord or scale are derived from. Okay, where am I going with this? Let's get rid of all our sevenths, ninths, and melodic minors and stuff and bring it back to simplicity, major and minor chords. Okay, it doesn't matter what key you are playing the song in. The notes in a major or minor chord are always derived from its key. So let's forget about, here's D written out again. Let's forget about the fact we're playing in D. If we want to know the notes in an E minor chord or a G chord, we go to the E major scale. I know this is confusing because I've said E minor, but this will hopefully make sense in a minute. And we go to the G major scale. So you want to know the notes in an E something, anything, go to the key of E. You want to know the notes in a G something, anything, go to the key of G. Okay, so this is a bit of an analogy I want you to think of, which I'll get back to later in this. Think of the key that makes the chord as being the Toyota factory. I happen to drive a Toyota, so I know you think my YouTube channel is so successful I'm probably getting around in a yellow Lamborghini by now, but alas, not yet. I'm driving a humble Toyota, but they are reliable cars. Okay, think of the key that the chord is based on, derived from, however you want to look at it, as the Toyota factory. It's going to put out a model of a Toyota or a chord. The key the song is in is a garage, and that chord that the Toyota factory put out is either going to fit into the garage or it's not. Hold on to that thought, as confusing as it is. I'll get back to it later when it makes more sense. Okay, first of all, deriving the notes in a chord. Say we wanted to know, let's forget about the fact we're playing a song in the key of D. That's not relevant at the moment. We want to know the notes in an E major chord. We pull up the key of A. Tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone, the major scale for, did I say A? For E. We want to know the notes in an E chord. We pull up the scale of E. We select the first, the third, and the fifth. If you remember your numbers, those three notes make up the E chord. So to get the notes in a major chord, you pull up the major scale for that key, and I don't mean whatever key the song is in, forget about that. I mean the key the chord is derived from. So an E chord comes, you pull up the E major scale. You get the first, the third, and the fifth, and that is your E major chord. Now, to make the minor chord, you flatten the third. Alternatively, you can pull up the E minor scale and get the first, the third, and the fifth, but that's a confusing, longer way to get to it because you kind of figure out the major key it's related to, then you rearrange them to start with the sixth, and all that stuff we discovered in the minor key. This is a simpler way, and that's why we're just sticking with the major key. So to get the notes in E major, you pull up the E major scale, you select the first, the third, and the fifth, that's an E major chord or an E chord. You pull up the first, the flattened third, and the fifth, so the only difference is you flatten that third, and you get an E minor chord. So let's pick another example. Let's say we wanted to know what notes were in a G major chord or a G. Pull up the G major scale, select the first, the third, and the fifth. That's a G major chord. Flatten the third, that's a G minor chord. So G, B, D makes a G chord. G, B flat, D makes a G minor chord. Couple of more examples. Let's go with A. If you haven't figured anything out by now, it's that I repeat and repeat and repeat, so a concept is really stuck in your brain. Pull up an A chord. We want to know the notes in A. Let's pull up the A major scale. Okay, the first, the third, the fifth, A, C sharp, E. That's the A major chord. The first, the flattened third, and the fifth, so all we're doing is flattening the third, is an A minor chord. Let's pull up those chords on guitar and have a look. Here's A minor, appearing somewhere on the screen now that I've post-edited this and put them in. Have a look at the difference between the chords. Knowing that a fret on the guitar is just a semitone in terms of music theory, have a look at the difference. The difference is one note has been flattened. If you remember from the first video what flattened means, it means taken down to the next possible available note. So that note is C sharp, and it has been taken down to C. So have a look at the notes in A, the notes in A minor, and now have a look at the chord shapes for A and A minor. You can see one note has changed, it's been flattened, and that note is C sharp going down to C. Just for the hell of it, swipe it all away. Let's do a D. We want to know the notes in a D. We pull up the D major scale. We get the first, the third, and the fifth. D, F sharp, A. Those are the notes in D. We flatten the third to F. Those are the notes in a D minor chord. So let's get rid of our scale. Just keep our chords here, D and D minor. Let's pull up the guitar chord shapes. Have a look. Have a look how one note changed between D and D minor. That's your F sharp. It's been flattened. Have a look at the notes in the chord. Have a look at the chord shapes. And you can see, F sharp got flattened back to F. In fact, if you pull up every chord, every major and minor chord you know, and you look at the notes in the music theory, then you look at the notes in the chord shape, the difference between all of them is one note is being flattened, and that's your third. So to recap, the notes in a major chord are the first, the third, and the fifth of its major scale. Forget what key the song is in. That's a whole other thing to think about later. The notes in its major scale. So if you want to know the notes in F sharp, let's do it. Let's go there. You might call it G flat, I don't know. I'm going to call it F sharp. So let's go there. Let's pull up the key of F sharp. Look at that. Whole plethora of sharps and confusion. The first, the third, and the fifth are F sharp, A sharp, C sharp. That's an F sharp major chord, or G flat major chord. Let's now flatten the third down to A. That's an F sharp minor chord, or G flat minor chord. Once again, there we go. That's a complicated example. I'm going to come back to that one later because that's going to be interesting when we start looking at the key of G. Okay, wipe it all away. That is how you get your notes in a major or a minor chord. It's very simple. You use your tone, tone, semitone to write out the scale, the major scale for that particular chord. And you take the first, the third, and the fifth, and those are the notes in the chord, the major chord. If you flatten the third, those are the notes in the minor chord. So A minor, it's just that flattened third. B minor, just that flattened third. That's the difference. Okay, that's hopefully made a whole lot of sense. So what I'm going to do now is put them in keys. and get rid of that confusion. Before I do, I'm going to point out a word that floats around in a lot of music instruction courses called triad. Okay, if you're doing music theory to know music theory, meaning on an academic level, there's a lot of instruction around telling you, learn a triad, learn a triad. I don't teach the word. There's a lot of words I don't teach because all they are is words that mean something you already know. So a major minor triad is a major minor chord. So if you want to sit an academic exam in music and pass knowing what the word triad means, then great. If you're learning music because you want to play and play well and maybe even play professionally, get paid for it, etc., you don't need to know the word triad. It's just another word for chord. Major minor triad. Why have the translation from triad to chord when you can just say chord? There's going to be a lot of words like that which I essentially diss and get rid of because you don't need to know them. I've been playing for decades professionally. I've known a lot of pro players. I've played with a lot of pro players. No one's ever said to me, can you play an A minor triad? They just say, can you play A minor or play an A minor chord? I've never heard the word triad floated around. If I was in jazz or classical more, then I possibly would. I can't speak for those. But in the more, shall we say, mainstream styles of music, it's just not a word that is terribly floated around in pro muso circles. It's more floated around, from my experience anyway, in my part of the world, it's more floated around in academic circles. So you can ignore the word triad. You now know what it means, great, but let's just call them chords. Okay, we figured out how to make a major and a minor chord. So now, how do we fit them into keys? If you remember, let's pull up the key of G. If you remember, we've gone, the first is major, the second's minor, the third's minor, major, minor, minor flat 5. Why is that? Okay, in order to figure that out, we have to determine how each chord is built. Okay, what I mean is, let's go back to our analogy of the Toyota factory and your garage. The key is your garage. What I mean is, okay, the notes in an A minor chord, it doesn't matter what key the song is in, the notes in an A minor chord never change. Same for every one of these other chords. They don't change. The notes from the A minor, for instance, here, are not determined by the fact you are in the key of G. The notes in A minor are A, C, E, period. That never changes. It's like saying the word car is the word car. It doesn't change. So you have to say, where do those three notes come from? And you remember what we said a minute ago, forgetting about the fact we're in the key of G. The notes in an A anything chord come from the A major scale. So let's forget G exists. Let's say we're going to play an A something chord here in the key of G to figure out the notes in A major or A minor. And when I say something, we're going to play either a major or a minor chord. For each one of these, they're going to be either a major or a minor chord. To determine which, let's go to the A factory and let's put out two models. Let's put out a major chord and a minor chord. First, third, fifth for the major chord, A, C sharp, E, thank you. Flatten the third, A, C, E. That's a major and a minor. Have a look for a second. Tell me which of those you think will fit in the key of G. If you picked minor, you're correct, because can you see a C sharp in the key of G? Doesn't matter if you're looking at notes or chords, let's just look at the notes. Can you see a C sharp? You can't. Can you see a C? You can. Remember the rule of playing in key? It means that you and everybody else are using the same collection of notes. So if you're in key for the key of G, you're only using those 7 notes. Whether it's in a chord form by playing them as a group, or in a solo form or a singing form by hitting notes individually, you're only using those 7 notes. So looking at that, playing an A major chord would be out of key. Playing an A minor chord will not. So when in the key of G, we play A minor. Now I just want to make sure you got this clear, where the notes in A minor came from. let's pick another example so that we can see that. Let's go with the G, the fourth there. Okay, now hang on, what key are we in? G, sorry. Let's go with the D, the fifth. Okay, what we're determining here, so you're not confused, is why in the key of G do we play a D major chord and not a D minor chord? To determine that, we need to see what notes are in a D major and what notes are in a D minor and work out which of them will fit, meaning which of them has only notes out of the key of G in it. So let's forget the key of G exists. Remember, to get our notes in a D major or minor, we pull up the key of D. First, third, fifth gives us D, F sharp, A, D major. First, flattened third, fifth gives us D minor. So let's get rid of D now, because we don't care how we got the notes in these chords. They never change. D major, D minor, we got them. Now we don't need to know how. We just need to know when we're in the key of G, which of those do we use? And the answer in this case looks like D major, because it's got F sharp, just like the key of G, whereas D has F, not in the key of G. So when in the key of G, to make sure we're only playing notes out of the key of G, we play a D chord. So this is where my analogy comes in about factories and garages, etc. To get your notes in a chord, you go to the Toyota factory, which is just the major scale for that note. So for a B minor, pull up the B major scale. For a C chord, pull up the C major scale. For an E minor chord, pull up the E major scale. It's just whatever that note is, pull up its major scale. Forget your key down here exists. Get your major and your minor chord, 2 model cars out of the factory, then forget the factory exists. Get rid of it. You've got a major and a minor chord, 2 outputs of that factory. Go down to the key the song is in, which is your garage. Which one of those chords fits in the garage? That's how you determine. And I forget what scale, what note I picked now. But one of those you can see, only one of them each time will contain just the notes in the key you're in. Okay, now we're going to finally understand the mystery chord, the minor flat 5. Here's the key of G. The F sharp. Let's write out the key of F sharp up the top. We want to know, do we play an F sharp major? Do we play an F sharp minor when in the key of G? Let's forget G exists. Let's go to our factory. Let's put out a major chord, F sharp, A sharp, C sharp. There's our F sharp major. Let's put out a minor chord, F sharp, A, C sharp. There's our F sharp minor chord. Let's pull G back up. Which one of those 2 models of cars, the major or the minor chord, are we going to use in G? I'll let your brain rack over that for a second and you'll reach the dilemma. That's about a second. You can always pause the video. The dilemma is minor fits, except both of these chords have a C sharp, neither of which fits. So actually, you can't fit a major or a minor chord into the key of G. So let's go back to the factory for F sharp and say, hey, neither of your models fits in my garage. I need a different one. Let's also flatten the 5th so that we have F sharp, A, and C, which as we can see, F sharp, A, C. Now it fits in our key of G. Hey, that one fits. What did we do to make it fit? We got a minor chord and we flattened the 5th. Okay, who can guess where the name F sharp minor flat 5 comes from? It's an F sharp minor where you flattened the 5th. So F sharp minor flat 5. This is a bit of a light bulb moment for you because you're going to discover now, oh, that's how they name chords. It's actually just that simple. When they say things like sharpen 4th, flat 5th, they're literally just getting the 4th and sharpening it, or getting the 5th and flattening it, or sharpening it, whatever. They're describing exactly what they're doing. So an F sharp minor flat 5 chord is an F sharp minor with a flattened 5. See, I told you in the very first thing that music theory is easy enough. it gets confused because so many people teach it with all this jargon and things that are like, nah, I'm going to get rid of the jargon. I'm going to point out words like triads and say you can learn them if you want, but you don't need to know them. I've never used them. So yeah, this is how easy it is. So that's where your F sharp minor flat 5 comes from. Okay, let's get rid of all that. Now you can, if you want, go through now and get every single key and get every single chord out of that key and figure out if it's major or minor or if it's major minor flat 5. But I'll save you 2 days worth of heartache doing that. You will reach exactly the same conclusion we've come to today. Music is algebra. It's like a formula that no matter what you put in, you get the same result. And what I mean by that is if you go and work out for every key, is the first major, is the second minor, like this, you'll reach exactly the same conclusion every time. Major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, minor flat 5. It'll work that way for every single key. Save yourself the heartache and just memorize that thing we had back in lesson 3, I think it was, with chords, pointing that out. And that is, save yourself all that. Hopefully now you understand exactly why it is major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, minor flat 5. So just to be my usual repetitive self, let's bring it all home for another one. Let's pull up the key of C. We're going to play a song in C. We've got our notes, we've got our chords, major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, minor flat 5. If you haven't memorized that by now, you probably will have by the end of this video. There are notes and chords in C. We know that's correct, but for the hell of it, let's prove if they're wrong or right. Let's go for E minor. I want to prove that that should be E minor in this key. Where do we get the notes for an E anything? From the E major scale. Let's put it up. Tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone, starting on E. They're the notes in E. Okay. E major gives us E, G sharp, B. That's an E major chord. Thank you. E minor, flatten the third. E, G, B. Thank you. We have an E major and an E minor. Let's get rid of the E Toyota factory up there. We've got our 2 chords, major and minor. Let's have a look. Which one of those do we play when in the key of C? And that G sharp should be staring at you going, I'm an imposter. I'm not supposed to be here. And you'd be right. It's the E minor. When in the key of C, we play E minor, which we already knew because we had the formula, major, minor, minor, etc. So I'm just going to finish, but as a bonus, I'll pull up one more chord chart for you. What the hell? I'm starting to put chord charts in, so why not self-indulge and do an extra one? Since we've got the notes in E major and E minor, let's pull up an E major and an E minor chord chart. Have a guess which of those notes is the third, which is the G sharp in the E chord. In the E chord, which is the G sharp, the third? And if you pick the note on the G string, you would be correct, because have a look which note gets flattened when it becomes E minor. That G sharp has now gone back to a G. All right, I truly hope this has given you some light bulbs, some education, and a good follow-on from our other videos. Any questions, just put them in the comments. I'm in the habit, if I get enough questions, things that don't make sense to people, of just making a video specifically to address those questions. So if there's something you're not getting, then put it in there and I'll do a follow-up video. But I got nothing left to say, which is unusual for me. I'm out of breath. Thank you guys. I really appreciate you all following, listening to my channel. Please hit like, subscribe, and the bell. And I'll see you in the next one.